Today we're going to unbox the BrewZilla 100 litre Gen 4 single vessel brewing system. So why the BrewZilla 100 litre Gen 4? Well, to be honest, because size does matter. My trusty, and I'm not sure what the lighting's going to be like here today. I've moved the brewery from the other side of the house, which is fine in winter, but coming into summer it's going to get direct sunlight in the late afternoon. And honestly, sunlight and beer doesn't mix. But also, it just means that things like the fermentation chamber and the glycol system are going to be working way over time to keep things cool if they've got the sun beating down on them. This side of the house, I've got coverage from the carport. There's a ceiling over the top, so we're not going to get affected by weather. And it's fairly open. It's nice, but it is also dark, and I'm not sure how that is going to affect the lighting. So just bear with us for a week or two while we sort lighting things out. But anyway, back to the topic. Why the 100 litre? The 35 litre 3.1.1 that I bought originally has served me well, and it was certainly big enough for me at the start, but now what I'm finding is that as I'm brewing the beers that I like to brew, I'm buying a lot less and I'm drinking more of my own. So that means that I need to brew bigger batches. The other thing is, people come around, friends come around, they want to have a beer or two, and pretty soon you've gone through a whole keg. It's good to be able to brew a bigger batch of the beers that I like and have more than one keg on standby, so that if I do run out, I can just quickly swap it out. I don't have to wait, and especially seeing as my favourite beers are lagers. Mexican lager, which I'm brewing, which I'm absolutely in love with. It's a beautiful drop. I'm about to try a Yuengling lager, which is a traditional American lager, and some dark lagers as well. So I'm going to be doing a lot of lagering, and it takes a lot longer for lagers to finish than it does other beers. So it takes longer, which means that I need to brew more in advance. So that's why the 100 litre system. And that's why soon there'll be another update to the fermentation system as well, with a uni-tank, jacketed uni-tank, so that I can stick my whole 100 litres into that jacketed uni-tank. It also becomes a bright tank, so I can condition the beer in there, and I can then just keg it as I need it. 2 or 3 kegs, and clean it out, get on with the next batch, which on average for me, a batch of lager takes anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. So doing one keg at a time doesn't make sense for those beers that I drink more often. So my old 35 litre BrewZilla over there is doing well. It's going to become my hot liquor tank, and I'll use that for sparging. This thing, because it's got 6,600 watts of low watt density heating, is going to do me well for the initial heat up for the strike water, but I will need something that I can, especially heat control, so I know that I can set that at 70 degrees for my sparge, and it will sit at 70 degrees, and when I'm ready to sparge, all I've got to do is pump the water in and do the sparge. The other thing is, because it has a pump on it as opposed to my old T500, I can just hook a hose up to it and pump straight into the 100 litre system to sparge as well. So that's the whys. So now let's do the unboxing. So when we get in here, the first thing we see is the lid. That's a flatter lid than the 3.1.1. So same sort of thing. It's got the pre-drilled holes there for the handles to go in, a larger hole in the middle for your recirculation, but I do notice that it is a flat lid. It's not domed like the 3.1.1. So that's the lid. And here we have the control unit. These are the clamps to clamp the boil extender on, or also when it comes out, hopefully it's not too long, the distillation lid. You'll be able to put a distillation lid on there and clamp that down as well. Length of flexible tubing for your recirculation. The tap, couple of handles, and there's the first big noticeable difference between the Gen 3 and the Gen 4 are the shape of the handles. The Gen 3.1, let me just grab that lid. So the 3.1 and 3.1.1 have this domed lid with two small knobby handles to lift it up with. The Gen 4 has these much larger handles that you can lift the lid up with, so that's good. This is the handle to lift the malt pipe out with, and you'll notice that it's got a much deeper indent than the 3.1. And that's so because you've got such a big grain basket, you can actually get a broom handle or your mash paddle. I've got the large metallic mash paddle. You can stick that through there, get one person on either side and lift it. But what I'm going to do later, as you'll see on here, hopefully that's high enough. I'm going, or maybe I go up to the top one. I'm going to put a metal rod across there and just a quick winch that I can pull down on that and lift the grain basket up with that winch. And the last thing in the top here is the recirculation arm. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to show this in action today because I'm still waiting for the Sparky to come out and install a 32 amp outlet for me. So once I get this set up, I will have to passivate it, which is just basically cleaning it. And once that's done, it'll be ready for use. But the Sparky is due out sometime later this week with a bit of luck. And the first batch that I do is probably only going to be a small batch, maybe a half batch, just until I get used to the unit and its sizes, and then I can dial in the grain absorption, the dead space, the mash tun loss, things like that in BrewZilla. Dogs. The mash tun dead space, the mash tun loss, things like that in BrewZilla, so that in future brews I get a much better result. But for now, let's just keep unpacking. Got to take the malt pipe out first. Very well packed. Again, well done, Kegland. It's just as well packed as the fermentation chamber was. Notice that it's got these little bits of rubber over these, I'm not sure what you call them, these little knobby bits that you pull up and twist, pull and twist, and stand it up on the inside. Pull the mash pipe out to let it drain. So they've been covered in a little bit of this soft foamy stuff, just so that they don't bang around on the inside of your brew house and dent it up. What that means though is that I'll need to go and get a knife. It's not sharp, so it's not going to do any damage. No, not that. A nice big malt pipe with the slots at the top for the handles to go, for this handle to go in, lift it out. Two new features on the malt pipe in the G4, and that's this row of perforations down at the bottom to allow wort to escape, and a second set of lugs here to stand the malt pipe on. Because it's going to be handy because it's such a big malt pipe. If you get a full batch in here, this could weigh 20 kilos easily. So being able to just lift it up to there, let the first part of the grain bed drain out, then lift it up to the second set of lugs, and then drain the rest of it out, then that's going to save your back. So down the bottom here, so this will be the false bottom and the top screen. As with previous versions, the way they've cut this off, and there's no way around it, there's no way that you can do it any other way, you do get the occasional sharp edge just on there, so just be careful when you're handling these. There's the false bottom. The other thing with this screen is that there's only a very small hole in there, so they've done away with that overflow pipe and put a small hole in the middle here so that you can use a digital thermometer to keep an eye on the temperature of your mash at the top of the malt pipe, as well as the wort as it's circulating through the bottom. Here's the false bottom. You notice that on this one, and I don't think it's standard yet on the 35 or 65 litres, they've changed the design of the false bottom. So it's much lower profile, so you'll have a lot less dead space at the bottom of your mash tun. And it's also a heat exchanger, so this whole thing, this whole plate here, is heating your wort as it flows down through the holes and across the plate. It's using that to heat the wort as well, so you're getting much better thermal efficiencies. The other thing is that this folds down now. It doesn't stick up, which was a bit of a pain, because if you wanted to use something like a mash stirrer that was connected to your drill, every now and again you'd hit that thing and bounce away. So the fact that it sits down now is quite good. Okay, so how are we going to get this? This is where it could be a two-person job. If you look down into the middle of the unit now, you'll see that the temperature probe's off to one side, but right in the dead centre is your drain, and it's flush as well. So it doesn't stick up, and you can't really see it, make it out too much. Oh, you might just be able to make it out in the reflections there, is that the drain actually is lower than the bottom. So everything will slope, it slopes down, everything slopes down towards the drain. And the other change, we're going to have to turn this upside down anyway to fit the tap. The other change is that there's no bottom plate here anymore, so you've got direct access right into the bottom of the unit. First step in setting this up is to get our tap. Now this is designed just to go straight through the bulkhead. There's a nut on the outside and this nut on the inside. I'm just going to do that finger tight because I rarely use the tap. Maybe now that it feeds off the pump I might use it a little more, but who knows. The other part to fixing it, as you can see, all the gubbins on the inside, but there's your pump. The pump, the wort flows out of the mash tun into the head of the pump and then out, and then it branches here. So this goes off to your recirculation arm and this goes to your tap. So if I can get this steady, put this on, and then with this butterfly clip just put it up around the center and that will stop any leakages. So that's the tap setup. Okay, now let's put this all together, and then there'll be the long wait until the Sparky comes out to hook it all up for me. I've just got enough clearance there. That's good. That means I'll be able to winch that up. I know a lot of people don't use this in the top of the mash, but I actually do like to use it because I think it spreads the wort out across the entire bed a bit better. And the recirculation arm has a slightly different design, I'm noticing, on these cam locks than on the original. So that's always been a bit loose, and if you spin it around, quite often what will happen is one of these cam lock arms will pop up. So you've got to being mindful of that. With this one, it's a lot harder to spin it around. I don't know that I'd want to spin it around where you're going to end up scoring it. But the cam locks hold it nicely in place. I'm getting a lot of this little bits of styrofoam everywhere, so when I do my first clean on it, I'll actually put a sieve in there, sieve underneath the recirculation arm, to catch any little bits that might get through the system. I'm not 100% sold on that. I might give Kegland some feedback, but I'll just bring it up to the camera. The hole that's drilled in the middle of that for the screw to come through is way bigger than the screw. It's way bigger than it needs to be. Now there's a washer on the back to hold that on, but there's no washer to go on the top. So either we need to have a washer on the top or a smaller hole, because the risk is that those little nuts could pull through that hole under a bit of load. We'll see. I might find a small washer that I can put under there. Okay, so that's ready to go on now. Again, just needs to get rid of some of that styrofoam fluff. And then the last thing to put on are these. These go on there and they clip down. Now the last thing that needs to be done is plugging the controller. We undo the cap and the keys upwards so the cord points up. And that's it. Since shooting that previous footage and waiting to do the editing, the sparkies are turned up and they've installed a 32 amp circuit for me. So what they've done is they've installed an isolator. It's a lot safer than installing a 32 amp socket. So the isolator turns off and on, and what they've done is cut the plug and wired it directly into the isolator. And that just reduces any hazard. It's just a lot safer when you're dealing with high amperage. The device is on, so let's take a look at the screen now and see what the next stage of the setup is. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is register the device by pressing the select button to enter the main menu and then selecting registered device. So we select button, hope you can see that, so register device. So now on the phone I have to go to app.wrap.io and enter the MAC address and the validation code. So let's take a look at that on the phone. Once you've logged into the Wrap portal, click on Register Device and select a BrewZilla, and just take a moment to read the instructions. It's fairly clear on what you need to do. Type in the MAC address and I'll quickly show that on the screen here. So you can see what number I'm typing in that comes from the BrewZilla screen. And then type in the validation code. And then click the arrow to the right at the top of the screen. Now that happened to me a couple of times. I'm not 100% sure why. Eventually it went through, and then I just gave my BrewZilla a name. It's BB, for Backyard Brewer of course, 100 litre Zilla. But you can call it whatever you like.
I found the portal to be just a little bit touchy sometimes, so you might need to click a button twice to get it to go through. Once I got it registered though, the device was right. It was in my list and ready to start rocking and rolling.
Once you've done that, this screen comes up and the unit's ready to go. That's it for this episode. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. It helps the channel out. It lets YouTube know that this is valuable content. And remember to enjoy your hobby, but drink responsibly.